So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for our February Zoom meeting. We are pleased to announce that we have a special guest, a U.S. Senate candidate who is running against Charles Schumer. Mark, Mark, thank you for joining us. That's Mark, let me see if I can pronounce this, Mark Szuszkiewicz. Did I say that right, Mark? I hope I did.
Closer than usual, Szuszkiewicz.
I try my best. I'm sorry, everyone. So Mark is joining us today, and we want to thank him very much for joining us. We appreciate his great efforts he has done in the last election. If everyone knows Mark ran in the Bay Ridge section, basically in South Brooklyn, last go around. But I'll leave that to Mark to tell more details about that. Mark, thank you again for joining us today. I just want to first start off by basically asking you, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background and stuff like that.
I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I lived in New York pretty much my entire life. I became a stockbroker after high school. I went to Catholic grade school and Catholic high school, Bishop Ford High School in Park Slope, Windsor Terrace area. Then basically, like I said, became a stockbroker after that. And then I became a financial advisor in my 20s. And after that, I kind of juggled several professions. I dabbled with a production company. I still did financial services part-time, as well as a real estate agent part-time. And I have my local cable TV show in Brooklyn and the Bronx and now Manhattan as well. Sports TV show, political TV show. Back in 2013, I interviewed some of the mayor candidates, Joe Lhota, a brief interview with John Catsimatidis. I worked for John Catsimatidis' campaign back in 2013. That's how I first got into politics. Just getting petitions signed, nothing crazy. I helped when I could. From 2013 to 2020, I was kind of only had one foot in the door in the political world. It wasn't, I thought about running as a district leader, the behind the scenes unpaid position. Didn't really care about the spotlight or anything like that. Didn't even want the spotlight of being a candidate. But once 2020 hit, basically we were going through a very difficult time, and I felt like there's a lot of corrupt politicians out there, and I feel that either they don't know what they're doing, or they know what they're doing and they're evil, or a combination of both. So I decided to run for office for state assembly. And it was a very heavily Democrat district. It was 34% during the 2016 election with Trump. So a lot of people thought I didn't have a chance. People hate Trump, etc. I didn't shy away like other Republicans did, and shy away from Trump and try to distance myself. I just kind of tackled the false, fake news, racist narrative of what and point out a lot of the good things policy-wise that Trump did. And aside from that, I also had my nonpartisan ideas, after school video game program, life skills classes, because I used to have shop class a long time ago. Now adults don't even know how to boil water. People don't know basic life skills. So I wanted to implement that, financial literacy, different topics for each class throughout a semester. They can learn a lot of different basic things and maybe be intrigued by something like as simple as splicing two wires together, that they want to go and become an electrician or whatever the case may be, and pursue a trade school instead of paying a six-figure salary, six-figure student loan to get indoctrinated. So financial literacy, so they understand how checking works, how credit works, how that loan actually works, and how it's going to impact their life. Affordable housing, municipal bonds to fund affordable housing instead of giving developers 15-year tax abatements, lease to own option for NYCHA residents. The list goes on, taking on their bank overdraft fees. These are things that both Democrats and Republicans agree on, and those nonpartisan ideas is why I was ahead 9% on election night in 2020. That consisted of Bay Ridge, Dyker Heights, parts of Brighton Beach and all of Coney Island and Seagate. And, unfortunately, the absentee ballots brought the lead down to, a deficit of a few hundred votes, and I ended up finishing with 49%. Got attacked in the media a lot for, this nonsense QAnon stuff or whatever because of using hashtags on social media. I didn't let that discourage me. I didn't go and crawl into a hole in the, hide or anything. I went and I continued to fight in an even tougher battle with a city council district that was 27% Republican in 13 and 17. Continued my nonpartisan ideas that resonated with people. Got screwed on matching funds because the city's supposed to be nonpartisan campaign finance board contested numerous donations, as well as some shady things with the voter profile that was supposed to be on the website that wasn't, that they did to a lot of Republican candidates. So a lot of shady things that the campaign finance board did. Despite all that, I still finished with 49% on election night, 47% overall. So both years, completely unwinnable seats, extremely low budget. But I went out there, I put door knockers manually in the neighborhoods. I handed out palm cards to people in the neighborhood. I talked to people on the street. I went to areas like Coney Island by the projects, which most Republicans don't do.
Right.
And basically, you don't win a statewide election in New York by going on Newsmax or Fox News.
Correct.
By not preaching to the choir, by going and convincing Democrats that I'm the best candidate because I have ideas that are going to benefit them, and not just partisan politics that will actually never even pass, the gridlock in Washington. Right. So, a lot of candidates go and preach about how they're going to do things that they know that they can't get accomplished, but it resonates with the Republican Party. So a lot of them vote for them, but they only preach to the choir, and we end up losing. So I have fresh ideas, and I think that I'm the best candidate. And I also not only believe that I'm the best candidate to beat Chuck Schumer, but even if I don't win, the goal here and the reason why I chose a statewide election instead of a much easier South Brooklyn election, since I already put in the groundwork the last 2 years, is because I want to help candidates across New York State, even in unwinnable seats, because we need to pick up 5 to 10% more than we normally would. And the only person that could help those local assembly, Senate, and congressional candidates actually go into those areas and convince Democrats to vote Republican is me. So that's why
that's my lead-in question. Now, that is amazing that you were in a district that had 27% for the first time for assembly that the last guy got, and you wind up with 49% of the vote. And then the other the first one was 34%, and then the second time for the city council, you said it was 27% for the last guy.
27 and 13 and 17. So
wow. And then you made that into a 49 on election night, and then it went down to 47%, which is amazing considering that you picked up 20% of the electorate, which is amazing because it proves that if you go door to door, boots to the ground, that you could get things done, that you could actually make a difference, that you could get your voice out there. That was my second question, which is basically what you touched upon, was what are your reasons for running for U.S. Senate? You touched upon that you would help the other candidates also. Also, we have a governor's race this year, so that would hopefully pick up some percentage points for the governor, because God knows we need a new governor in New York.
I honestly feel that that's more important than my election, and that's not only the local candidates, but by helping the local candidates, we help the state candidates as well, not only myself. I think this is the most important election in New York State history. Last year was important for New York City's history. Unfortunately, we didn't get the mayor, but the state, we just elected a mayor, Democrat mayor for another 4 years. New York City and state cannot afford another Democrat tyrant like Hochul or Cuomo in the governor's seat for another 4 years. I don't think New York will be able to recover. We see what's happening in Australia. We see what's happening in Canada. We have a constitution, but the people the tyrants in New York are not paying attention to it.
Oh,
So that's you know,
yeah.
that's
My next question is, no, you're absolutely right with that. Uh, the state is just so out of control. We're spiraling into Detroit. We're all going to become Detroit, especially the city, the way it is going. But my next question is, what are your plans for education, and are you for school choice and stuff like that?
yeah, I'm school choice. I also believe in, like I said, the vocational training. Hopefully, we could implement something like that federally. Um, there's a distance learning program that I kind of want to implement for the parents that do want to homeschool but feel overwhelmed at the concept because they have no teaching experience. So basically, now this is not a priority. I think, I want to make it clear that I think in-person schooling is important, but nowadays with the mask mandates and things of that nature, to have something in place where they have an option to do distance learning because of certain areas in the country that have tyrants enforcing mandates on children. Um, it's the distance learning would kind of be like training modules. I don't know if anyone's ever done any for work, but you watch a video, you have questions afterwards.
Yes.
So it'll be pre-recorded training from some of the better teachers out there. I also believe that preventing all teachers from indoctrinating children with their political ideology, that includes getting rid of CRT, that includes if they believe that God doesn't belong in schools, then politics shouldn't either. They should not be preaching their political ideology in math class. That's not what their parents put their children in school for. So I believe that, teachers that try to put in their political ideology should be reprimanded and eventually fired if they continue to do it.
That's definitely a fair point. They don't want religion, and okay, then no politics either, unless you're teaching a history of politics.
Which
History.
they tend to avoid, that the Republican Party was the party that ended slavery. They don't like to mention, the history of the Republican Party. They'll mention history and then neglect to mention that it was the Republican Party that did a lot of these things.
Oh yeah, they putting their agenda across. Now, what are your plans? Because a lot of people have this problem in their lives with the healthcare industry and not having proper healthcare. What are your plans for healthcare if you're elected senator? What would you like to put?
I have a middle ground policy that even conservatives agree with. It's a little bit complicated. I know a lot of people might not be able to follow it, but I have a health insurance license since originally got it in 2005. I have some experience and some creative ideas, and I think that the left wants universal health care, Medicare for all. It's not affordable. The taxes would skyrocket, but keeping things the way they are is not a good thing. We obviously have Obamacare, which penalized people for not buying it and included pre-existing conditions. Trump got rid of the penalization part, but it still left us in shambles because, when you have pre-existing conditions allowed and not everyone has the coverage, it's adverse selection. Because what am I going to buy insurance for if I could just buy it when I'm not healthy? Like I sell life insurance, and you can't buy life insurance if you get diagnosed with cancer. You can't be diagnosed with cancer and then buy life insurance the next day. It doesn't work that way. You have to get it when you're healthy. And a lot of politicians don't understand the health insurance industry, and they say, oh, well, pre-existing conditions, that's not fair that people don't have coverage. And, obviously I feel for those people, but the only resolution would be somewhat of a universal health care program. The way that it would work was everyone would actually have almost like an emergency type of health insurance that has a 50% co-insurance, which is very expensive, with a 10,000 annual cap. So basically the way that would work is, that's not a great policy to have, but it's better than nothing. If somebody gets into some unforeseen circumstances, they have no coverage, they don't have a six-figure bill for the rest of their life if they decide to not get additional coverage. The other advantage of that is it still leaves a market open for individual, for insurance companies to stay in business. A Medicare for all is not realistic because even Obama said you have health insurance companies that would go out of business if we just did everything government. And that's, hundreds of thousands of jobs. It's just not something, you can't put insurance companies out of business. It would be a disaster for the economy. So the way it would work is people would still choose what their network is. So the premiums would go into those insurance companies from the government, so similar to the way Medicaid works, where you still could choose your carrier, but the government pays the carrier, whether you have Empire or one of those other ones or whatever the case may be. So that reduces somewhat of the cost where the taxes aren't astronomical, and it's not going to raise taxes on each individual person. It's going to raise taxes on the corporate tax, which Trump already lowered. But aside from that, the benefit here is most insurance companies, insurance policies are with people who have it through work. So all of these corporations, even though their taxes are increasing, they're saving an enormous amount on premiums because they're not paying as high premiums for their employees. So the taxes will go up, but it's also being offset by the money that they're saving from the premiums. Now, they still could, the employers could still provide those supplement policies so that their employees have a good plan, because 50% coinsurance is not a good plan. But to buy a policy that only covers a maximum output of $10,000 a year is significantly less expensive. It's going to cost, a lot less. I mean, I still have to go through actuaries to determine the exact numbers, how much percentage wise it would have to go up as far as the corporate tax, and how much money the corporations will be saving. So there's a lot of numbers to crunch with this, but I think it's something that's feasible and can make sense. That way every American has some type of it's called catastrophic policies. So, it's basically designed so that nobody has to pay anything extreme. The other thing is, if people have that, they're less likely to go to the ER when they have a cold because there's a high coinsurance. If that's all they have is a catastrophic policy, they could still buy the supplement policy, and it's significantly less than what a standalone full coverage policy is. So I'm not sure how many people listening followed all of that. I go into detail on that again in writing on my original website, mark4ny.com. It goes into on the issues page a lot of the nonpartisan ideas. My website now, mark4newyork.com, just basically says I have a plan for healthcare, and I want to outline it regardless because I'm hoping it gets implemented. But the last 2 years, I've been putting these nonpartisan ideas out there for 2 years, including this healthcare plan, and apparently nobody seems to care because people want to do things the way they want to do it. So the only way things will actually get changed is if somebody like me actually gets in there and does it. So what is your thoughts, Glenn? I don't know if you followed it, but
Yeah, I did. No, look, at the end of the day, something has to be done because the way it's going now, the healthcare is out of control. What is that also where it gives from state to state, when people can shop for health insurance, that they have the cross the state lines type of deal? Where that
I'd like to. Originally, when I thought of this, I was running for state assembly, and I was hoping to implement it just on the New York State level and see how that goes, because insurance, the reason why our premiums are so high, I touched on it with the adverse selection, it's called, when you're insuring people with pre-existing conditions, and a lot of people that are healthy are not buying coverage. In this case, it's literally whether it's everyone in the state or everyone in the country. So the risk pooling factor is significantly higher. So the insurance companies wouldn't really have much of and as much of a risk. So it's going to lower the premiums for everyone. And yeah, they would have a somewhat of a marketplace, but it's where they could choose their base carrier for their catastrophic plan that comes with it. Or they'll default with one type of plan, and then they could choose if they want to upgrade and buy supplemental coverage from a carrier to cover that additional 50% co-insurance with a 10,000 cap. So
Yeah, because I hear what I was hearing that when Cuomo was governor, that they, and probably also Hochul now, that let's say you're a retired New York City police officer, and now you're in Florida. They're looking to take away their, let's say, GHI from them because they're in Florida. They're trying to do it like where you need to see our doctors in New York, or something like that. They're trying to do a red tape, like a backroom way of doing it to get them where they don't have that insurance no more. So I don't know if they implemented that yet or that they're trying to do that. Did you hear anything about that, basically?
Yeah, I mean, this plan would basically, I'm hoping, since it is a federal office for U.S. Senate, I think that if I could convince conservatives to be along with this and Democrats to be along with this, which I think I can, this could be universal federally. That'll also reduce the cost for everyone because it goes back to risk pooling with insurance companies. If you're covering every citizen in the country, it's significantly cheaper. And I think it would be a national network, not a state network like what you were talking about that they're trying to do, which is evil.
Right. Now, my next question, and thank you for that. It's a well thought out plan that you have here. And if anyone would like to see more about that, that you can go to your original website. You said, Mark.
Original website. I updated it to mention that I'm running for U.S. Senate, but the problem is I have so much information on there, videos and calendar. There's so much crammed into that website. It takes a while to load. So I created the mark4newyork.com, which just forwards to my Anadot donation page. It goes into some details about me and about 10 bullet points about different ideas within my platform. But in detail, I go into it on mark4ny.com under the issues page.
Yeah, Mark, if later on when you get a chance, just put those websites that you mentioned on our Brooklyn Tea Party Facebook page, so that way people will be able to go to there and click on it and see it when they get a chance.
I also have it on all my social media platforms, Mark4NY. In my link tree, you can scroll down and it'll have the direct link to the issues page on there as well. So
you also have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Okay. What is that under?
I have the link to it on my link tree, I believe, but I don't have there's not that many followers on there. My old production company board show had a few thousand subscribers, but I think you need at least 100 subscribers to do a Mark4NY direct link, and there's not that many people. I just post things every now and then. My largest following is on Instagram, and which I have close to 4,000. But
and what's your Instagram? How do they go?
All my social media is Mark ARK, the number 4NY. So that's across all platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Getter, Facebook, everything. So.
Okay, Mark4NY, right? Okay. Next question I have is, what are your economic plans for bringing our state back from the brink of collapse? Really, we are in the New York City area. You can see with the crime, but that's a different issue right now. But besides crime, the economics, how people are leaving the state. What would you, on the federal level, do to make the state? I know it's a little difficult. Usually it's the governor and the mayor on those levels that run these type of fields when it comes to economic. But what could you do on the federal level as a senator from New York State? I mean, obviously bring some money back to our state, because I believe we pay more in taxes than what we get back.
Yeah, at least it used to be that way. I don't know if it's still going to be that.
Right.
We're losing so many people that,
Yeah.
those people are people that have the money to afford to sell their home and to leave and et cetera. So those are the people making money that are paying a lot of those taxes. So
Right. They are leaving by the busload. What would your economic plan be, even if it's for the whole country? Like, what would bills you would like to present to the Senate as a senator?
well, I mean, on the federal level, we got to call out a lot of the nonsense that the Democrats are doing as far as spending. I believe in cutting taxes and lowering spending. Obviously, I'm a conservative. The only thing that would increase taxes on the corporate level would be the healthcare plan, which I think would be beneficial to everyone. Aside from that, we have millions of dollars that were sent to Africa for gender studies programs. I mean, the free crack pipes now, a lot of these things that, hopefully we control the House and the Senate. But back to, on the local level, like you said, that's the mayor, that's the governor, as far as, they're the ones who kind of have the decision on lowering the local taxes. But getting federal funding for the homeless crisis is a big issue. I know that's not something as far as taxes, but a lot of the reasons why people are leaving is not just taxes. There's, homelessness everywhere. Even in Bay Ridge, there's homeless people sleeping on 86th Street, which I never thought I'd see in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. And actually mental health and rehabilitation programs, job training programs, not just homeless shelters where you put them in a homeless shelter that they don't want to be in because they don't feel safe in, and then eventually leave. One thing that I wanted to do also is for welfare benefits, drug testing. And, I put this plan in place also back in 2020, but it's a plan that has, the benefit of it. It's not, I know the Democrats, think it's evil or whatever the case may be, but it's not like you test positive and you don't get benefits. We need to identify the problem because homelessness and mental health issues is often, most of the time, a direct result of alcohol and drug abuse. And we need to address that problem. So this is not for people who are working and they're not getting paid enough to pay the bills and they're on food stamps and whatever the case may be. There's no, they're doing what they're doing. We're not looking to drug test everyone, but people who are doing nothing, it wouldn't happen right away. Their drug test would have be scheduled 3 months later when they apply for benefits. So either find the job or get tested by that point, because we want to save money. Also, we don't want to test everybody because that's an expense as well. So 3 months later, you're either finding a job or you're going to get tested. And if you smoked weed or whatever, you got 3 months to get everything out of your system. So either clean up your act, get tested. If you test positive and you knew the date was 3 months in advance, then obviously you have a problem. That doesn't mean you lose your benefits. It means you go into an outpatient program to get help. And if you continue to test positive in the outpatient program, then you have to go into an inpatient program, 30-day inpatient program. And at that point, so there's no 3 strikes, you're out, as long as you're continuing to get help. But you do have to get the help. You're either getting a job or you're getting help to rehabilitate yourself. And then, also, job training programs. There's things in place that people don't know about, like vested and things of that nature, where you could, go to cooking school and it's covered by the government. There's already plans in place, just a lot of people don't know about it. So it's really just helping, putting the resources there to guide people in the right direction to get them back on their feet. Now, that's going to bring people back because there'll be less crime, less mental health issues, less homelessness. And, the funding for something like that, I think would be a big help in cleaning New York City and other parts of the country as well. So, there's a lot more to it. There's the economy is a big aspect. I mean, also on the local level, when I had said municipal bonds to fund affordable housing, the plan was basically, if if those not familiar with municipal bonds, they're triple tax free if you're investing in the municipality. This is something that I was looking to implement more so on the city council level. I brought this idea back up in 2020 as well, but I was looking to work with the city government as a state elected official to try to implement this. But if you issue municipal bonds, the property would be backed by the property's value, and the revenue generated from the rent would cover the interest on the municipal bonds. And the way it would basically work is, let's say you have a building, just to use even numbers, that would cost 100 million to put a high-rise building on there, retail space on the ground level, so you get a good amount of rent roll from the retail space, whether it's a chain pharmacy or one of these other stores that's on the ground level. I was looking at Coney Island specifically because that's where I was running in the last 2 years. You have a lot of these vacant parking lots, which apparently developers picked up after I put this idea out there. Basically, you do underground parking, multi-level, so you don't lose the parking spaces. You actually gain parking spaces.
I was going to touch upon that because in Brooklyn, you see all these buildings popping up in residential areas where it used to be regular 3-family or 2-family homes or 1-family. And then you're seeing these monster little buildings in the middle of the block all of a sudden. And where are the parking spaces? Not everyone owns a car, but some of them are going to. And it's insanity to try to find a parking spot in New York City. But I'm glad you mentioned about the parking spots underneath those buildings.
Yeah, so they would have underground parking, multi-level, so you'd actually gain parking. You gain revenue from renting, those parking spaces out. And then the affordable housing is based on income, the way they currently do it. But the difference is you're not giving developers 15-year tax abatements. You're actually having private investors invest in the municipal bonds. And let's say that, going back to the number, let's say that project would cost 100 million. I'm sure it will cost less, but whatever the case may be, let's just use even numbers. You take out municipal bonds for the total of 200 million. So that way, 15 years down the road, that property is hopefully worth 2 million instead of 1. You could sell the property to a private investor at that point and then pay back the principal on those municipal bonds. But in the meantime, you have an additional 100 million loan from those municipal bonds that you could use to, revitalize the parks or, whatever the case may be. You could use it for pretty much anything, towards another program like the rehabilitation centers that I was mentioning. You have Brothers Island in New York City, 2 small islands not being utilized. You put some money into that to renovate that, have that as shelters and rehabilitation and job training centers for homeless out in Brothers Island. So that's another idea as far as places for shelters, because they don't want them in the community. But
no, that's very good plans that you have put in place. Hopefully, if you become senator of New York State. Next question I have is: are you for or against the vaccine passports? And do you believe that the citizens have the right to choose their own healthcare choice? Meaning, just like they have, a woman has the right to choose when it comes to abortion, her body, her choice, her healthcare decision. Do you think the federal government should force workers to have the vaccine to continue to work at their jobs?
Well, as you already know, but I'm sure a lot of the viewers don't, I've been an advocate against these mandates since before the first shot was even given to anybody. So I was this conspiracy theorist and protests at Union Square and across the city that these, that's their plan. The mandates were a part of the plan. The information was out there, that this was what they're looking to do, to put in the passport system. It sounded like a conspiracy theory that would never happen. And people have a short-term memory, apparently, because what they thought was a conspiracy theory a little over a year ago is a reality. And we're seeing people lose their jobs because of it. It's completely ridiculous. It's on my website as well, themarkfornewyork.com. It's make it clear that mandates for medical procedures, vaccines are not allowed anywhere in the US. Coercion is not consent. So I don't believe that. I mean, I think a lot of this is the government is putting this pressure on the employers so that when things go south and they realize, the Supreme Court's realize this is not legal what the companies are doing, it's the politicians that kind of put the pressure on these corporations. These corporations are going to get sued by all these employees who are getting fired. And we're going to see a lot of these companies go out of business as a result of these lawsuits. And this is a win-win for a communist agenda. Either they get people to comply or they put these businesses out of business. They already put a ton of small businesses and even large businesses like Century 21, for those in locally watching in Brooklyn, very large department store, Model Sporting Goods. These lockdowns just put the nail in the coffin for businesses that were just barely hanging on by a thread.
And Model's been around since 1888, and Century 21, I believe, since the 1960s or 50s on the local level there.
So it's not just mom and pop shops. These are huge. These are huge, stores that were all across the, New York and Models in the Northeast, and it's just you're seeing them disappear, and it's a result of tyrannical lockdowns. Now the mandates. I mean, restaurants, they're all losing money because people just aren't going out to eat. When the people who were going out to eat were the people who weren't afraid of the virus. They were just living their life because there's over a 99% survival rate. And now they're not allowed to go to those places because they're being forced to show papers. So a lot of these businesses, I spoke to restaurant owners. Some are losing 25%, some are losing 40% of their business. And plus they have to deal with, asking somebody for their papers, which people aren't comfortable doing. And oftentimes you almost, like a diner, they don't have a bouncer.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That they're putting businesses into the position of being police officers, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Because at the end of the day, here we're not saying, for example, we're against vaccines, right? If you want the vaccine, that's your choice. You think it's your proper way of handling it. You consult it with your doctor. Your doctor feels that this is the best course for you. By all means, get the vaccine, whatever you think is best for you. But please do not tell me personally, or anyone really, that you have to have it or else you will lose your job. You will lose your livelihood. That is just, or you need your pass. Even if you got the vaccine, maybe you forgot your phone at home, or maybe whatever, you don't have the thing in your wallet, and now you can't travel anywhere freely within our own borders. You can't go to a restaurant, you can't go to a movie theater, you can't do whatever because you need papers to travel. That is something that is a little bit bizarre in my opinion. Like I said, if you want the vaccine, by all means take it. No one's saying whatever. Either way, I know it's a sensitive issue on both sides of the ledger here, but it should be about choice.
One thing that I want to drill home every chance that I get, the important thing is, number one, if this was the Black Plague or smallpox and it's killing like 50% of the population, or something, maybe there's somewhat of a justification if there was a vaccine that actually worked. But this doesn't prevent contraction or the spread of the virus. That's the two keys. It's not preventing contraction or spread. So if you have it and I don't, you could give it to me and I could give it to you. The concept of the mandate makes absolutely no sense.
Well, absolutely. No, it's because when you think about the last outbreak, the Omicron, we all found out that I have the vaccine, but you don't have the vaccine. Okay. And you're evil. That's what they're trying to do. You're evil. You don't have the vaccine. You're going to kill people. But I have the vaccine. Okay, you have the vaccine. You just caught. Now you have corona. You do realize you've tested positive. You do realize you can now spread it to your family members. So what's the difference between me and you? you could still do it, but I won't be hospitalized. Whatever. Look, at the end of the
That's
day
not
here,
true either.
I know that. I know that.
Yeah, and
That's the things they keep on putting out. But look, at the end,
I know it's a touchy subject, but I
sure,
talk about how people are in an abusive relationship with their government because they lied to them about 15 days to slow the spread. They
right,
lied to them about masks. They lied to them that after they get the shot, they don't have to wear masks. They
right,
lied to them saying that if you get the shot, you won't get it. They lied saying if you get the shot, you won't spread it. Do it for your grandma, do it for blah, blah, blah.
right.
That's a lie. It's all lies. And now they're trying to tell you that, Circle Back Saki was in a press conference, and one of the fake news reporters actually asked her, why is Joe Biden still calling this the pandemic of the unvaccinated when I'm triple vaxxed and you're triple vaxxed, and referring to them, the reporter and Circle Back Saki. And she says, oh, well, you're still 17 times less likely to die or be hospitalized or something like that. Just making up numbers. Like, where are you getting that statistic from, that you're 17 times less likely? Like, how do we know that that's not a lie as well? How do we know? Because people are still being hospitalized and still dying after getting the shot. And we've seen that happening. And not only that, FIFA players, 108 of them have died from the heart failure in the last 6 months.
Right.
The world-class soccer player athletes in better shape than pretty much anybody, and they're dropping, from heart failure. And this is something that eventually will catch up to people, and will.
See, right now it's a conspiracy theory, everyone. Right now it's a conspiracy theory, but until it's proven correct, which in my opinion will. But look, it's to be debated. And look, and I understand there's people that are adamant for the vaccine. And look, and I say to those people, look, wholeheartedly, if you believe in it, I'm not going to demonize you. I'm not going to say you're evil or whatever. But please don't do that to me either. That's all I'm saying. We should have a choice.
Friends that took the shot and we're fine with each other. It's the media that's making people.
Right, they're stoking the flames, and it shouldn't be that way.
I've lost friends and family members as a result of the argument, but at the same time, I'm just pointing out why I don't get it, and I'm not going to be the politician that does the politically correct thing to say I got it and everyone else should get it, because the reality is, the pharmaceutical companies are making trillions, and the politicians invested in those pharmaceutical companies with insider trading. So the agenda is there, and I'm not going to add to it. I'm not going to speak up for what I believe is right. But if you want to get 3 shots, 10 shots, that's entirely up to you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you you can't get it. I'm just going to put out my personal opinion, which you can take it or leave it, basically.
And that's the way it should be. I don't like when people are divided, like, oh my God, it shouldn't be that way, ladies and gentlemen. Look, I have an opinion. You have an opinion. I could respectfully disagree with you. I don't have to demonize you. There's no need to do that. You want it, by all means, get it. God bless you. Wish you the best. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't be where we have that problem. But let's move on to the next question. And what are your plans to fight to make sure our borders stay safe in the United States? For example, you see what is happening at our borders, and thank God we have Vice President Kamala Harris. Let me tell you, the things she's done to protect our border. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just in an episode of The Twilight Zone for a second, because she's done absolutely nothing. But what would your plan?
I was a little confused by that statement. Is there something in the news that I missed?
No, it's my brand of humor. I'm sure.
I figured that's what it was, but unfortunately, we have a president and vice president that's doing nothing, and until we get them out of office in 2024, thankfully this is a 6-year term, and I'm going to be fighting to get anyone out of office in Congress and the Senate within the next 2 elections before I'm up for re-election, to get them campaigning to get them out of office. And I campaign like nobody else, so I will be at rallies and etc., whether it's in Kentucky, Idaho, wherever across the country, to make sure if we don't take back the House and the Senate in this election and I'm in office, we're going to take it back in the future. But we need we need to continue building the wall. I know the wall is a controversial subject, but it was working. And, you know, they believe in putting the wall up in DC to protect them. And they believe in, you know, the private security for themselves and everything.
The mansions have nice big walls.
Yeah. So we need to continue the construction of that. Possibly, I know Trump brought up the idea of solar powered panels on the wall, which ended up being dropped. They did the numbers on it saying that it's going to take 18 years or something like that before you break even from the cost of energy. But maybe that's something we could consider anyway, because even if it's
18 years, so all right, so eventually I hope to live another 18 years. So
we're talking about the future, you know, 20 years from now, whatever the case may be, and people talk about emissions and things of that nature. So you know, if we could power cities, and also for emergency, you know, to have that solar power there. To have the cities nearby running off of that, and instead of blackouts and things of that nature. So,
well, especially with Joe Biden, he wants to put what is it, half of U.S. cars by 2030 to be electric vehicles. I mean, how are we going to do that with the electric grid that we have today? I mean, we'll be having roving blackouts like we're in a third world nation. It is absolutely hilarious to think that we're going to put all these electric cars into place. We're in New York City. Where am I? Let's say I got an electric car. My neighbor has an electric car, but he has it where he has a driveway. I don't have a driveway. Well, all of a sudden I'm going to start running wire through my lamppost or something like that. What about you? How stupid is this idea?
Well,
they have the infrastructure.
They're going to have more charging stations instead of gas stations, but you're talking about even the fast charging ones take at least
a half hour.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Or more, actually.
I mean, do you really, like, how long does it take you to fill up a gas tank? A couple of minutes, not sitting there for, you know, hours or whatever. You have to stop into the diner at the thing and buy food every time just to kill time while you're waiting.
We're all going to get fatter. It's really ridiculous. Now, my next question I have for you: do you support term limits on politics?
Yep. That's on my platform as well, on my website, and you know, I vow to serve only 2 terms, and I invite other candidates to make the same basic pledge to, you know, everyone else out there. I know Ted Cruz talks about term limits, but I haven't heard on him writing a bill or fighting to pass one. I see him talking about it when he's asking for donations, and that's about it. So going back to getting people out of office that aren't for America First and America Free policies, if you're not for term limits, then, you know, that's a red flag to me, that you want to be a career politician and you're doing this for the wrong reasons, and you need to be out of office. So I think 12 years is enough time to make an impact on helping the country, and then I could go back to you know, and enjoying life without the you know, political life that I'd be living.
Yeah, I mean, like you have people that came with the seats of the Congress. I mean, they're just molded into that.
Yeah, they have the lobbyists and special interest groups. You know, they're in the pockets of so many different people, and that's you know, that's
the swamp.
A lot of people get into politics for the right reasons, and then the longer they're there, the probability of them being corrupted is higher than somebody who's in there for a shorter period of time.
True, very true. My next question is, what are your plans to stop voter fraud? Are you for voter ID, the mail-in ballots? What would your plans be on that? You know, because there is it's obviously been in the news a lot about voter fraud, and having here in New York City on the municipal level, you have green card holders, and then you have people with not expired visas that will be able to vote in our local elections. I don't know where else in the world where a non-citizen could have a right to vote in their elections. Maybe there is somewhere, but I don't know.
They used to have it in New York City for school board elections only. and there is no school board elections anymore.
Right.
So, but city council and mayor, that's a very, especially the largest city in the country, the financial capital of the world, we cannot allow for something like that. That's, to have people who are not citizens influence the election of New York City is just, number one, it's unconstitutional. When de Blasio was, asked to sign it originally, he knew it wasn't constitutional, so he didn't do it, because this happened years ago, and he didn't do it because he knew it was wrong. But now he's on his way out. Term limits are, have him heading out, and he basically, with everything that he did, he was, destroying the park in East River Park for the people in the Lower East Side, Manhattan. Possibly has a deal with developers where he had to make sure that gets started, the destruction started before he got out of office.
Wasn't it Eric Adams that signed it on the way? He was on the way out. He probably supported it at the end, but then Eric Adams, I believe, was the one that put
the voter ID. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Either way, I mean, well, de Blasio didn't sign it originally when they tried to do this years ago. It got, the court battles are there. I don't think it's going to happen before the 23 city elections. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the courts are going to rule that unconstitutional.
You know the way this actually goes away? If all of a sudden, right, all of a sudden they put it into play, all of a sudden Republicans start getting elected. All of a sudden the people that they thought, well, they're not citizens, all of a sudden they're really conservatives. All of a sudden, if they actually start electing Republicans, they will overturn this so quickly.
Well, they won't be able to overturn it if the Republicans are elected and it worked out for them. But that's wishful thinking, because they'll have a lot of people coming in from other countries that are on food stamps and other welfare benefits that aren't citizens, and say if you vote Republican, they're going to take this away from you or whatever, which isn't necessarily true, because we're not for.
We don't want people to rot on the streets.
Yeah, a lot of people think that that's how Republicans feel, that they're, Richard Nixon made one of the largest food stamps increases in the country's history, I believe. So it's just not true. But
regardless, created the EPA too.
Yeah, regardless, I don't think that the voting is going to stand up in court. That bill, it's going to be ruled unconstitutional. But these are strange times where politicians are corrupt and judges are corrupt and etc. But regardless, that could be something that goes to the Supreme Court, and I think we're going to win that ruling if it has to go that far. Mm-hmm. But going back to the other questions, I also put that on my website, the Mark number 4 NewYork.com, where you can see all the other ideas. But the voter ID, I am advocate for voter ID. Right. The whole racist narrative is nonsense.
I mean, that's just racist in itself, trying to say because you're a certain color, you're inept enough to get an ID, that you're so inferior to get an ID. That is just in itself racist, in my opinion.
You had somebody that did a video. I don't know if it was PragerU or whatever the case may be. I'm sure a lot of you and some of the other people watching might have seen it already. But they went to Berkeley, California, and asked the white liberals, "Oh yeah, it's racist. They don't have ID," and blah blah blah. Then the same person went to Harlem and asked them. He's like, "Yeah, I have an ID. Is it racist to ask somebody for ID? No. Like, everyone has an ID. You need it to go to a hotel, plane, right, buy cigarettes, beer, whatever."
Municipal buildings, you can't go into Congress without an ID, right? Like if you're visiting the Capitol building.
Right. And a lot of buildings in New York, just for security measures, you need to go for a job interview. Right. You need an ID to go to certain jobs.
Stupid, because they know they want to do what they want to do.
But at the same time, they also feel that people should show their ID in order to go into a restaurant now.
That's the fun hypocritical version of that. Where are your papers? Where is your ID? Where is this?
That's not right.
No, that's not. No,
I mean, for these so-called unicorns that don't have an ID, I think that to battle that is the expense. The Board of Elections spends a lot of money as it is on voter information guides that tend to leave Republican candidates out of those voter information guides. That goes back to the Campaign Finance Board being corrupt, even though say they're nonpartisan. But they could provide an ID for people that don't have an ID. When they, if they register to vote, we have all these online verification systems to verify who you are. They could mail, well, you go in person to the Board of Elections, they could take a photo and you could get a Board of Elections ID after you verify your identity with other means.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous that we're in a modern age and all of a sudden, I mean, come on.
Plenty of other countries have voter ID. It's a normal.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
Most people agree with it, even Democrats. It's just
it's just that they know that they're doing whatever they're doing, and they don't want no one getting in on their fraud that they're continuing to do. But anyway, the next question I have is, what is your position on the attempted rezoning of single-family neighborhoods to include multifamily units, which would destroy Long Island and other suburbs?
Well, again, that's a local issue that I wouldn't really have much of a impact on, but I think it's not fair. I mean, I'm seeing, Brooklyn and other parts of the boroughs that, everything is a high rise. They're tearing down churches and putting high rises. They're tearing down different bowling alleys or whatever, stores that used to be there, and putting up high rises. So you need other things to do other than live. So, you can't have everything just be a high rise for people to live. You need the parks, you need and that's why I brought up the Lower East Side, because, the park over there that stretches for about 2 miles is a prime real estate spot for waterfront property. And I don't think they're going to rebuild the park. I think that they're going to say, oh, well, we don't have money, but these developers are going to come in here. They're going to build some affordable housing. We'll still have some park space. But so, there's a lot of corruption within that. Obviously, the developers are getting money and they're donating to these candidates, and they have a huge influence on elections. And, who knows what they do aside from donating to the campaign, how much money they're helping these politicians make. But I'm against it. And, I'm an anti-corruption candidate. I want to put in, different plans in place to investigate not only the insider trading, but also any other type of pay-to-play things to, try to put these politicians in jail. I know it's not some people tell me you shouldn't say that because you're going to put a target on your head. I'm pretty sure I have a target on my head from the beginning with the ideas that I'm putting out there. We're regulating bank overdraft fees and getting rid of 15-year tax abatements for developers and replacing it with municipal bonds. So they already don't want me in office, and they're doing everything possible to make sure that I'm not in office.
Well, look, just keep fighting the good fight, because if we don't have people to fight against the clear corruption that we are seeing in front of us, it will continue forever and ever. My next question is, because I have 3 more questions to ask you, and then we're going to take some questions from the chat section. So anyone in the audience that has any more questions you would like to ask, just please type it up and put it in our chat area, and our Vice President, Larry Schneier, will be probably reading those off in a minute. So I have 3 more, and what the next question I have is, what is your plans to fight big tech censorship on free speech, like Facebook and stuff like that? What would you do? What could we do on the federal level, U.S. Senate?
I say, well, we get rid of Section 230, which is, kind of they're saying that they're a publisher, and then, everyone doesn't have a right to have an account. Yes, they do. Literally anyone can have an account. It's just about, it's even more publicly accessible than internet or the phone, because those things you have to pay for. It's a free account on all social media platforms. It's not a paid account. There's no approval. There's no criteria. There's no editorial journalists experience required. So they're not publishers. It's a free speech forum, and it needs to stay free speech. They could regulate things that are criminal, but talking about how you disagree with the vaccines is not criminal. So, pointing out that people, FIFA athletes are dying, which is a fact, is not criminal. Things like that shouldn't be censored.
No, it should be. Look, we should be allowed to debate the issue. You don't have to agree with us, let's say, and we debate, and that's what colleges was supposed to be for. Also, you have a debate. You debate issues and ideas, and if you agree, whatever. That's how you grow as a person. You debate ideas and say, well, you know what? I do see your point, and I maybe now come a little more to your side, or maybe I now see either or. Look, at the end of the day here, we should have free speech as long as it doesn't have any hate in it, like you're preaching to kill people or anything like that, those type of things. But
if it's nothing illegal where there's
right,
a threat to harm somebody
but they're making us like we're criminals. And if, for example, I run a couple Facebook pages, I get every now and then, especially I run a Trump page, I kept group quality. They keep saying group quality. Like, say, for example, there's a pending story that I have to approve. I look through it briefly. I approve it. I don't see any weird, it's missing facts or whatever they claim afterwards. But right now, I just see it as a story from, let's say, Fox News. I approve it. And all of a sudden, a week later, I get a group quality strike. You approved a story that was not factual, and it goes against community standards and whatever of harm or whatever. Like, what the hell are they talking about? Okay, which one do you mean that I approved, or someone made a comment, whatever? So when I go back to check what some of these people might have said, they can't show it to me. Me as the administrator of the page, they won't show it to me. They say, "Oh, we don't show things that go against community stand or like."
Because they used to screenshot what they were censoring.
Some of them they do, but not all of them. And I'm like, I want to know, what did this person say? Me as the administrator of the page, I want to know, did he say something disgusting? I will throw him off then. But is it something where you think and it's nothing, and I'm not going to throw this person off, but you won't show me? So how am I supposed to administer my page properly? Plus, they just constantly, they're fact checkers. Who the heck are these fact checkers? And it winds up being stories that wind up being true to begin with. So it's just disgusting.
I mean, the whole lawsuit, the whole lawsuit with Candace, I think it was Candace Owens had one, and others had them with the fact checkers, and it was determined in court that the fact checkers are opinions. So how are you a fact checker with an opinion and you're censoring? Like, there's got to be something wrong here, where it's one or the other. Either, I mean, who cares if it's a fact or not? Like, if you're posting your opinion on something that I don't think the vaccine saves lives because you can still get it and still spread it and etc. How is that? That's me literally saying I don't think. That's not me saying this is a fact and etc.
It's your opinion.
Yeah, when I
say allowed to have an opinion no more.
When I say something's a fact, like you can still get it and still spread it, that's a fact.
No, they'll say that's an opinion, and obviously it's not, because facts are facts.
Well, it used to be fact checked a year ago, or
right.
Now it is an actual fact. That's pretty much on everyone agrees with that as a fact now. Well, so
some people do. But my next question is this.
But even the government admits it now, so it's not like something that they're hiding.
I know, but even when they admit it, they moving on, they say, nothing to see behind these curtains of the Great Wizard of Oz, right? Yep. So the next question I have is from our chairman of the board, and I'm just going to read this because he emailed it to me, and he basically said, rogue nations are funding their international and domestic threats across global regions with the high price of gas and energy. Would you reopen the Alaskan and Canadian pipelines along with allowing offshore drilling once more? As we are aware, the more energy America creates, the lower the price is upon global markets, simply supply and demand. Countries like Iran and Russia are using the high price of oil, nearly $100 a barrel, to fund their respective regional threats towards neighboring nations in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. While wind and solar energy can be part of the solution, as we see in Germany and the rest of Europe, the skyrocketing price of energy proves it cannot be the sole resource. Furthermore, with much of Western Europe using Russia's gas and power to make up for their green energy, they are solely unable to act upon Russia's aggression in the Ukraine. How would you address the Biden administration's insurrection upon opening uh, up previous sources of domestic fuel?
Well, we see it was pretty much an almost immediate impact that when Biden shut down the buildings of the pipelines, that our gas prices immediately increased. So obviously, I would push to have it reopened, resume construction. It makes sense, as we talked about before with gas. It's the most convenient way to fuel your car. It's also used for so many other forms of energy. And like you said, it has, we have to be energy independent, and we were under the Trump administration.
We're number one oil producing nation in the world.
Yeah, I saw Trump in Mar-a-Lago, and during his speech, he said how he basically, our reserves were empty. He described it as somewhat of like a cave or something of that nature. And he basically, the Middle East was paying people to take the barrels because they were overstocked on it.
Bought them all up.
He actually profited by taking all those barrels and filling up our reserves. Now, our gas prices were starting to skyrocket, and the Biden administration decided to go into our reserves to keep the prices from, he ended up saving us 2 cents a gallon by starting to deplete our reserves. And as Trump said, that's not what it's for. It's for emergencies and wartime, so that we have a reserve for emergencies and wartime. Now we're not going to have that. Biden is bought and paid for by China. He's not putting America first. None of what he's doing makes sense. So yes, we need to be energy independent in any way, shape, and form. So the pipelines were a good thing. Biden stopping construction was horrible, not only for losing the jobs there, but also just for energy independence, which, he's making us more vulnerable to our enemies, and our enemies do not see him as a threat. They did not mess with America when Trump was president. We had peace across, pretty much everywhere, during the Trump administration, because no one would dare to mess with us, because they saw Trump as a leader and somebody to not be messed with. Biden is a joke. He could be bought and paid for by pretty much anybody, and they walk all over him. So
he's the emperor without any clothes. This guy is just an embarrassment to the United States, an embarrassment to his own party. He's because he is a puppet. Well, maybe maybe not an embarrassment to his party. They love him. They could control him. They could prop him up, weekend at Bernie's, whatever they want to do. They could do. I mean, look, he likes to spend his weekends in Delaware. 28% of the time, he likes to go to Delaware, where they could recharge him. I guess they put him in the electric grid. They plug him in. Do they understand that it also takes fuel? Good old oil to get that electric. I mean, what do you think electric comes from, really, for the most part? It comes from oil. All right, solar, yeah, until a cloudy day comes in. Look, at the end of the day, they're just insane, and we need to get these offices back. It's so crucial for this midterm election, everyone, to go out and vote and register your friends and family who are not registered. Or if they're registered, preach to them. Tell them you like the way the 40-year high. Just tell them the bread and butter issues of the day. Keep it simple. Don't keep it so political because people, I'm a Democrat. Oh, you're going to have division there. You're going to have people like, hey, everyone's going to put up a wall. What do you mean? All you say is this. You like the high prices of gas? Do you like the high prices of food? You like spending extra $40 when you go shopping for food? Do you like all these high prices? You go to fast food. Everything's gone up too. Like the $5 menu on the Popeyes, they're doing the commercial for Popeyes, $5 box. Sounds great, until you go to Popeyes, it's $6 a box all of a sudden. But you just had a commercial for $5, the one on Flatbush Avenue. I'm like, what is going on here? Everywhere you go, everything's skyrocketing through the roof. But yet, people think, oh yeah, I must vote Democrat because my great grandmother was a Democrat, and it's for democracy. For the new immigrants that come in, I have to register as a Democrat because they say because it's democracy. Democracy. The Democrat Party is like Fidel Castro's party here. They are not the John F. Kennedy Democrat Party. That has left the building a long time ago. So they are no longer the blue collar workers for the blue collar workers, as you can tell how they treat the blue collar workers in Canada. Okay, Justin Trudeau, did not get off topic, is just out of control. But getting back to
well, if you're going to get off topic there, let's point that out. Let's elaborate on that. Because that goes in with the mandates. We see what's happening in Australia where people can't leave within a certain almost like a house arrest type of situation.
Right, they can't even go back home.
Canada's getting worse. And America, we have our Constitution, but we might be the last to fall. But eventually we will if we keep voting for Democrats that don't care what the Constitution.
I want people to listen to Ronald Reagan's speech. He did it in the 1960s. Google it. It's on YouTube, on freedom. Listen to his speech, and it'll resonate to today. Listen to Ronald Reagan's speech on freedom, because freedom is just one generation away of leaving us. And we need to remember that. We need to remember, ladies and gentlemen, that the days that we say this can't happen, look how many this can't happens happened already in your lifetime. This will never happen, whatever the topic might be. Just look. Just look back and see. And you'll say, oh yeah, that did happen. This happened. Yes, whenever you say this can't happen, that means you just cursed yourself. It's going to happen. Be careful. Don't allow people to steal your rights away from you, because they'll never give it back to you. Okay, unless we uprise and say, we get in the streets and scream or whatever. He who yells the loudest gets their way. So yell loud, people. Fight for your rights, because at the end of the day, it'll be taken away from us. Like you said, don't think we even though we have the Constitution that it can't leave it. Hey, they can pack the Supreme Court if we don't make sure we have a nice stance in the Senate or whatever. They'll pack the Supreme Court. The Constitution be damned at that point. They're going to have not judges that will care about the Constitution. They'll have activist judges. So that is what we need to watch out for. I have one more question, and then we're going to go to our audience. And this is again from our chairman of the board. And it goes apart about the automakers. He says, as automakers are being pressured to move to electric vehicles as their sole energy platform, we, the American consumer, plus the environment, are moving towards a tipping point. Electric vehicles simply do not currently meet the needed drive range for many non-city plus suburban communities and those who drive for a living. Furthermore, the heavier the load or the colder/hotter the weather shortens the battery charge availability. The batteries add an additional ton or more to a vehicle, increasing the wear on tires and roads, leading to an additional microplastic entering the environment as these systems wear down. Not to mention the heavy metals that are used and currently remain mainly non-recycled. how do you seek to address the feel-good politics that have entered into one of the America's most important industries? Would you push for more hybrid vehicles and a delay in automakers going fully electric? We kind of touched upon that, but maybe you have more insight on that.
Yeah, I mean, just the environment as a whole, a lot of these feel-good legislation, as he put it, is nonsense because if we reduced our emissions to literally zero, it would have a very minute impact on the environment because China and India, they enormously impact the environment. We are not the main contributors to environmental issues. We're not even close. If we reduced our emissions to literally zero, it would do almost nothing for what they say as far as carbon emissions globally. It's a very small impact. So I want to put that out there. Number two, like you said, we touched on it before. We can't have only electric. I was a truck driver for 3 months prior to 2020. That was like my new kind of career choice because I wanted to get paid to travel the country. I like driving. I've been to 48 states. I like driving through the desert and the mountains and seeing the scenery. It's a very fun job for me. So I was driving an 18-wheeler before running for office. And like I said, financial advisor, people refer to me as a truck driver oftentimes, but there's a very small period of time. I'm obviously very smart. I'm not, I don't want to be labeled just as a truck driver because of something that I did for 3 months.
Actually, they're one of the smartest people going, actually.
Well, I mean, I also did it because of job security, because it's no matter what recession you're in, trucker is the most secure job out there. And there was that's another thing that Hannah brought up, the truck driver that won in New Jersey. That's a local state election. Not a statewide election. A statewide election is going to take a lot more money. A lot of people like to use that as an excuse not to donate. And I'm not beating Chuck Schumer with a few $100. Like I need actual donations in order to do that. But back to the point, you're not charging, even if, Tesla is looking at, they have a pickup truck that could haul a decent amount. You're not hauling, tens of thousands of pounds of cargo. I mean, the gross vehicle weight is, up to 80,000 pounds between the tractor, the trailer, and the cargo load. Even if you come up with the technology to make that electric, the time that it's going to take to fuel it, it could be done while the driver is sleeping, but you have team drivers a lot of cases so that the truck is constantly moving. And vehicles, as far as I road trip. I haven't flown a plane since January of 2020 when the company paid me to go back and forth from Texas or whatever to for the trucking job, because I won't wear a mask on a plane. I practice what I preach. I know they don't do anything. I think it's tyrannical that they're forcing people to obstruct their breathing, which is not healthy, breathing in their own waste. I know that's a controversial issue as well. I don't care. I'm going to speak my mind for what I think is right and not what is politically correct or popular. I'm not bowing down to the media, but I drive, I can't, if I'm driving across the country and I need to get somewhere, that's a massive delay for me to, if I'm stopping at these charging stations. And when you talk about the environment, look at how much those masks are impacting the environment, literally billions of masks in the ocean at this point, because of them being worn globally. Like they talk about plastic straws. Look at them in the ocean. Like,
I know now I have to have those paper straws. Like as soon as you put your mouth on it, it dissolves into your mouth. I mean, it's insanity.
I do think that there should be hybrid and more electric cars, but once again, it goes back to choice. Like, the market should determine what is there. They would have the tax credits for people who are buying electric, but the reason why people aren't buying electric is because of the convenience. Like you said, unless you have a garage that you can charge it at night, hybrid at least gives you the option where you get better gas mileage, but you still have, the option to fuel You could have things that are predominantly, you have the ones that only have a small gas tank and it's predominantly electric, so you could move more to that. I'm hoping that our next president, whoever 24, basically gets rid of that nonsense, because we're not looking to do that. And I think, what is it, 2035 they wanted to do
I
it.
think it was 2030, but maybe I'm wrong about that. But it's just absolutely ridiculous, really. So hopefully the next president will be smart enough to say that this is not going to fly here. Larry, if you could join us, our vice president, if you could read any questions that you
Yes,
might have in the chat section, please.
sure. All right. We got a question from Hannah, and sort of, continuing with the theme, we're talking about drivers. And she asks to Mark, how do you plan to mobilize voters? And for an example, outreach to Uber, car service, medical transportation drivers, as they have captive audiences, and a lot of them are not so fond of the Democrats anymore. So, um, how do you plan to
Well,
mobilize?
I had my hack license up until last year, because I
Okay.
didn't do it because of the mask. I wasn't going to sit in a car and wear a mask all day. I had two cars, one that was renting out. Sometimes I was renting out two. I wanted to be familiar with the industry and eventually grow a fleet of cars to rent out. I stopped at two because de Blasio changed it where the taxi drivers cannot own their own vehicle anymore. They have to basically, I have to lease it from one of the dealers. They can't get their own diamond to get their own vehicle. They're not releasing new diamonds unless it's either a wheelchair accessible vehicle or now they made it where if it's an electric vehicle. I did have a plan when I was running on the city level to have something of a fleet of electric vehicles, but that's a long, detailed plan, and I'm not running for city office at this point. So I think my plans will fall on deaf ears with Mayor Eric Adams, but it could be something that generates revenue for the city. But I think one thing's on the city level is allow drivers to own their own cars again, own their own diamonds instead of having to lease, because they're paying a lot more that way. And it's unfair to the drivers. A lot of the restrictions that Mayor de Blasio put on the drivers is one of the reasons why I only did it part-time, because it was a destination filter. I could get paid to go in a direction that I was already going. And like I said, I wanted to grow a fleet of cars, which I thought would have been good. So I'm very familiar with the taxi industry. Unfortunately, the Democrats have a very large impact, because I was supposed to have a Zoom meeting with the candidates with one of the taxi. It's not an organized union. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but I was the Independent Drivers Guild. I was a member of that too. And I was a driver, but they didn't allow me to join the meeting, and they only met with the Democrats on a Zoom meeting. So much like sort of the police department endorses Democrat candidates because they always feel that the Democrat is going to win, and they don't want to burn any bridges. They want to try to make friends, but they stab them in the back anyway. So
Right.
if it's part of a union, whether it's the police union or they're not going to be in your best interest. So you're trying to go with the party that you think is going to win, instead of actually helping the party that will actually help you, because you're not winning by helping the people that are hurting you. It makes absolutely no sense. The unions need to get behind the Republican Party for a change and let us actually fix the city and the state and the country, because what you're doing by helping them win is not helping you. So
Absolutely. Larry, any more questions from the audience?
Yeah, a few more kind of clarifying that question. It's Hannah's asking more about strategy to get out the vote, and I mean, I guess you sort of covered this, but like what you're saying about like the drivers, well, in general, more of a mobilization strategy, and also if there's how do you feel like you could convince like these drivers to maybe get them to switch to GOP, or talk to their riders about get out the vote, and
Well, they're not
Republican.
going to talk to their riders or
Okay.
put palm card materials in there because a lot of the customers are Democrats. They don't want to have that conversation. They're worried about their star rating and things of that nature. So
Yeah.
unless politics come up and you want to try to avoid that conversation, if you're a driver, if somebody doesn't agree with you, they might, they're not going to tip you, and they barely tip nowadays anyway. Just because of the Uber, they re-implemented the Independent Drivers Guild, helped made that happen with putting in tips again in Uber. But when it originally started in the first few years, there was no tipping option, which got people used to the concept of not tipping their drivers. But yeah, they're not going to have the conversation with customers. It's not going to happen. But the message to the members of the Independent Drivers Guild and all the drivers out there, they have a large outreach to them. Hopefully I could reach out to them and they'll hear what I have to say. But it's pretty clear de Blasio is really his policies really screwed a lot of the drivers out there. It also made it where they were affected by the times that they could drive prior to the pandemic. There was they were, if it's not busy, they weren't even allowed to go online. So there was a big impact, and they were saying it was basically because of traffic. But de Blasio is he's the worst mayor in history. It just infuriates me thinking about everything that he did. He got rid of the third lane on the Brooklyn Bridge to add an additional bike lane, causing traffic. He got rid of the lanes on the BQE on both sides, specifically to deter people from driving, to increase traffic. So it's not about traffic. If anything, preventing drivers from going online when it's busy, the way that worked is they would drive to the areas that are busy, and you have them commuting all at the same time to go to the area that's surging. So that's going to cause more traffic, not less. So de Blasio, it's not like he didn't understand what he was doing, because he probably did, because he's a communist. And and this green agenda with congestion pricing and causing traffic on purpose by closing down lanes. He just wants to get people away from owning cars in New York City. I mean, he, by causing lockdowns, was the only thing he did to reduce traffic, is by forcing everyone to stay home, so to speak. So that's the only time there was no traffic.
Mark, you said de Blasio is the worst mayor, but at this moment in time, Eric Adams is not.
Yeah, but he's the one that did everything.
Oh, I know, but also Eric Adams could say goodbye to those lanes. Has he done that yet?
I would hope so.
I would hope he would. Will.
We also have potholes that are.
I know. I have one on my block. I have to call.
The point of landmark status because they've been there so long. So
absolutely, it's like the moon craters, and maybe we're going to see John Glenn, whatever, orbiting it pretty soon. And but the thing is this: we also the crime has shot up so much in the last month and a half, even more than de Blasio. So look, I pray that Mayor Adams will do the job. Good job, but at this moment in time, he continued the mandates. He talks a good game, but with no results. So let's see a little bit more time. Let's hope for the best for our city, because at the end of the day, as Republicans, we do want him to do good. Politically, might not be great for us, but who cares about that? Because at the end of the day, we have to live in this city too. We don't want
a problem with Eric Adams if he does a good job. That's all I care about. I don't care that he's a Democrat.
Yeah, we don't care.
I said when he won the primary, I was actually happy that he won the primary because he's a former police officer, and there were plenty of communists on the ticket. Right. And Democrats did not vote for the communist candidate. They vote for the person who they thought was going to be a law and order candidate. But so far, he hasn't done anything to show that he's a law and order candidate. And that needs to happen sooner rather than later.
Exactly. Larry, any more questions?
Yeah, got a couple more questions from Brenda Black, a comment and a question. So she says that to Mark, you're the first Republican I hear talking about outreach to Democrats, and she thanks you for that. And her question is, what are you doing to reach out to the Latino community who are majority Democrat voters, and she had recently switched parties herself. And she says a lot of Latino family values align, with conservative and align more with Republicans and Democrats. So what are you plans or more specific outreach to the Latino community?
Well, I was helping Edwin de la Cruz in his special election in Washington Heights by sending out robocalls and text messages. And I was out there briefly. Unfortunately, I had to be across the state for a statewide election. I helped him where he could, large Hispanic community there. There's also the New York Young Republicans Club. They have a Hispanic caucus. They're asking me to try to recruit some of the Hispanic Republicans that I know to do outreach out there. So, it's pretty much every demographic can relate to some of the nonpartisan ideas that I have, especially when it comes to housing, which is an important issue, crime. It's just basically pointing out the common sense that, social media is not going to do it. You need people face to face to speak to them and explain to them the different nonsense narratives out there. Because a lot of people think Republican and they associate that with racism. I have it on the back of my palm cards, the history of racism by party. I know we all know this, but the Democrats, the party of slavery, the party of Jim Crow and segregation, the founders of the KKK, Lincoln, the first Republican president, ended slavery, voted for the Civil Rights Act at a higher percentage than the Democratic Party, desegregated the schools during the Nixon administration, and President Trump was the first president to make the KKK a terrorist organization. Now, they say the myth about the party switching, and I like to point out, I use the joke of an analogy that, this is not like the WWE where somebody just turns from bad guy to good guy in the middle of nowhere. And it's just not like that. It's not like we were the racists the whole time. You guys want to switch things up to make things interesting, just throw a curveball out there and just it didn't happen. You had two people who actually switched during the Nixon era that they talk about, the Nixocrats, that they came over to the Republican Party. That didn't happen. Only two members of Congress actually switched during that time frame. It's a myth. It's not accurate. The only thing that switched, which is an interesting fact, is in 1984, CBS started broadcasting the presidential election results, the Republicans being red when the Democratic Party was the red party. But as you know, we were in the middle of the Cold War and red was associated with communism. So the Democrats no longer wanted to be red. And since they controlled the media, they decided to go and switch and make that the red party. And since they control the media, they're also the ones with the racist narrative. And if you repeat a lie enough times, people start believing it. So it's really pointing out the facts and pointing these things out to people. And that's really what makes a difference. And especially if you have Hispanic, candidates who are running for local office, like Edwin de la Cruz, who ran in Washington Heights, and Dabby Carreras, who I believe is running for assembly also in Northern and other Hispanic candidates, as well as Hispanic members of the New York Young Republicans Club who are knocking on doors and things of that nature. That's going to make an impact. But it's nonpartisan ideas, whether you're Black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever the case may be. Some of my nonpartisan ideas, I want to touch on one of them, which I think is really important before, and I don't know how we're running low on time. I want to make sure I get this out. I want to introduce legislation to prevent government employees from taking jobs with the companies they regulate. So if you work for the FDA, you should not be able to get a job with Big Pharma. That's how we have the opioid epidemic. Somebody approved oxycodone as less addictive than other pain medication because of its time-release formula. That was a lie. That person gets a job with Purdue Pharma a year later, making millions of dollars. And that is something that we need to get rid of. A 10-year non-compete clause with any government employee, whether you're working for the SEC, you shouldn't be able to work for a bank afterwards. If you're working for the FDA, you shouldn't be able to work for Big Pharma. It's common sense that whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or even a communist, you could agree that that makes common sense. And that's one of the things that I want to fight for. And I think, once again, everyone could agree on that. So.
Absolutely. Larry, any more?
Yeah, one more question. from Keith Karen. So the Department of Education is mostly left wing, and they're pushing. We talked a little bit about this before. The CRT, implicit bias, diversity, equity in all areas. What are your plans to eradicate these philosophies?
Yeah, I touched on it before. CRT doesn't belong in our schools. It doesn't help anybody. Making white people be ashamed of who they are because of things that they had nothing to do with before they were born does not help them. Being black and being told that you're a victim and you can't make it because of this white, dominant world, and that doesn't do anything good for anyone's self-esteem. That doesn't do any good for camaraderie within each other in the classroom, to hate each other or whatever the case may be. I mean, pretty much everyone on this chat, I believe. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. You could have grown up in the 70s, unless you grew up in like the 20s, 30s, 40s, or something like that. You had, the desegregation was done by the Republican Party during the Nixon administration in the schools. So we had, black classmates, and we got along with them and we became friends with them. And the racist, narrative out there, I like to use the analogy that racism is like COVID, in the sense that it's real, but it's not as serious as the media is making it seem. So, that doesn't belong. I touched on it earlier that, teachers should not be allowed to indoctrinate their students. Politics has nothing to do with math class or science, or if you're talking about history or something, social studies, whatever the case may be, there's some aspect of politics there, but political, personal ideologies do not belong in the classroom, the same way they claim religion doesn't belong in the classroom either. So I want to get rid of that. The teachers union is the most powerful political weapon out there in the country. So getting past the teachers union, the only way to do that is to have foot soldiers all across the state, to put out the campaign literature out there, to talk to people. I am very good at writing my campaign literature. I do my own campaign literature. I don't pay consultants. I don't waste money that it's donated to me. But once again, in order to get these door knockers to put on people's doors, to get these palm cards to hand out to people, to convince them, to educate them, it does take donations. So I'm hoping that people donate, otherwise I might not even get to pass the primary. So donate, mark the number 4 newyork.com, or in my social media platform, the link for my WinRed link. Those of you familiar with WinRed, you could look at the U.S. Senate candidates. I'm one of the ones listed on there. Also, my website and my social media has the links in the bio to donate either WinRed or securely through Anadot.
And your website, everyone, is right behind Mark, and the banner behind him. So
yeah, those are the old websites, but the markfornyc.com forwards to the current website, mark the number 4 newyork.com. markforny.com is the archive site for my state and city election, which I changed to update that I'm running for U.S. Senate. But like I said, that loads up slowly. You can click the donate button there too. Any way you go, eventually you can get there to the donate page, and hopefully you can help raise some money. So, even if I don't win, the money goes to good use, because I'm red pilling people. I changed 20% in a city election. If I can pick up, 10% statewide or whatever the case may be, that should be enough for a win. Trump got 42% in New York, and that's before the mandates. It was after the lockdowns, but it was before the mandates and before a lot of the other tyranny that's happening, and the rise in crime. And, a lot of people have Biden remorse, and a lot of people even have remorse with Eric Adams, since he's not doing a good job. So more and more people are waking up. This is a year that we can win, and it's now or never. And like I like to say, so you don't win general elections in New York by going on Newsmax and Fox News. You can probably do that for a primary or win in other states, but in New York, you need to go out there, talk to the people directly. They're getting a lot of misinformation from the fake news media, and we need to tackle that information by direct marketing with text messages, emails, having foot soldiers out there on the streets. All those things cost money. I can't, I was able to knock on doors and reach 3,000 people in a local district. I can't do that with a statewide election. I need the money in order to make things happen. And people think that, number one, their vote doesn't matter because they're one person, or their $10 donation doesn't matter because they're one person. And if everyone changed that mindset and donate a few dollars what they can, it adds up and it makes a difference. And that one vote adds up as well. So the one thing I want to touch on, since I am on the voting topic, people often ask me, well, Mark, you had the corruption with your elections the last 2 years. What's the point of voting if they're going to steal the election? Number one, you're not catching them stealing if they win legitimately because everyone stays home. And number two, they want to break us down and make us feel like this is pointless, this is hopeless. They want to break you so that you give up and you don't vote. That's exactly what we need to not do. We need to make sure that we go out and vote. We let our messages be heard. We support the candidates like myself that are fighting the good fight. It's now or never, ladies and gentlemen. New York is not coming back if we elect a Democrat governor again. We need to take New York State back. We need to take our country back, and we need to do it right now.
Right, definitely. Larry, is there any last questions before we conclude?
No more questions.
All right. So before we conclude, Mark, I just want you to have, I know you already touched upon a lot of this, but what would you say to your potential voters if you do win the election for the primary for the Republican Party? What would you say to the regular electorate that would be Democrat or independent about why you would be the best choice to beat Charles Schumer? Plus, keep in mind, you can mention, his record, what he has done for New York, what basically he has not done is the real thing. So, how would you say that?
Well, I'm not going to focus. I didn't do a mudslinging campaign in the last two elections. I don't plan on doing one now. I think, Chuck Schumer kind of speaks for himself as far as how people feel about him. I'm not looking to go to a mudslinging. The important message would be that the nonpartisan ideas. I'm not looking to, focus on party politics that is going to just end up being gridlock in Washington. I want to pass things like the healthcare program that I mentioned, like the anti-corruption bill that I mentioned, like regulating the bank overdraft fees that are taking advantage of people across the country. These are things that I think both sides could agree on, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on making real changes to make our country better, and not the divisive party politics that no one could agree on. No one's going to pass any legislation on certain things. I'm a conservative Republican. I will vote conservative Republican 100% of the time when it comes to issues like the Second Amendment and things of that nature. I'm not gonna vote for red flag laws. I'm not gonna do any of that. I'm not gonna hide behind anything. I'm not gonna try to bow down to the mob. So I am going to stay an America First conservative Republican. But when I'm in office, I'm focusing on ideas that I think are common sense that both sides could agree on. And the ones that aren't agreeing on it are the politicians that are corrupt. And I'm looking to expose those corrupt politicians, whether they're Republican or Democrat. If you were doing insider trading, or if you're in the pockets of special interest groups, you need to be out of office, and I'm looking to expose them. So I think that will resonate with both sides.
Absolutely. Very good, Mark. I want to thank you on behalf of the Brooklyn Tea Party. Once again, I'm President Glenn Nocera of the Brooklyn Tea Party. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this Zoom meeting with our candidate for U.S. Senate. Mark, once again, thank you again for all you have done for New York City in your running for office, for getting that messages out there. And also giving hope to the Republican Party that there is a chance, if you put hard work into it, that you could actually, make a difference, get close. You got close twice, very close for a district that really hasn't shown for the last other candidates that was anywhere winnable. You've proven that with little money, you still could make a difference, and you've almost reached that, and you might reach it with the U.S. Senate. So I ask everyone, if you like what Mark said today, and you would like to support him, go to his websites and help him out with donations or volunteering or whatever you want to do to help Mark out through social media, promoting his websites or what have you. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Mark, once again, thank you again for joining with the Brooklyn Tea Party today and giving your views on many different topics. You are very well versed in your answers, and we appreciate all your time that you have given us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then whatchamacallit, Larry, we could end the recording right now.